All right, it's the beginning of the month, it's March, and then we got a lot to do in the garden this month, so we're gonna be going over what we're gonna be planting in our garden in March, and some of them are gonna be a little bit tricky for us because of our weather, but we're starting to cool back down. We were at like 85 the other day, and now we're getting down into the 60s again during the day, so it's gonna be prime time for some of these vegetables. Before we get started on all that though, I wanna give you a little update on what's going on with the cedar. So a lot of the carrots did come up, and we can see that the spacing is pretty good here. So I do need to thin out just a little bit, but they're in nice rows this time compared to how I would do it by hand. So we'll be working on that a little bit. I'm not going to get overly crazy about it, but overall I would say the cost of that cedar is going to do what I wanted to do as far as carrots go. As long as it helps me get in a straight line, then I can work with that. So there's that. But the first thing we're gonna plant in March is our potatoes. Now they're not here yet, so technically it would be the first thing we're gonna plant, but it's not the first one because they're not here. But we have this bed behind me that we're gonna start preparing. They should be here like any day now. I had saved some potatoes last year to start from my own seed potatoes, and my lovely wife cooked them all. She didn't understand, so we are just going to start over, which is no big deal. So we're going to start getting these beds ready for that, and as soon as they get here, hopefully they'll be in a good position to where we can get them started. We might have to wait a couple days, but we'll definitely put a video up about that. So potatoes would be the first thing, if not already. With the warm weather we've had, I would have pushed that ahead by 2 weeks and done it probably around Valentine's Day. But we didn't have that, and that's not an option, so it is what it is. So today, what we're gonna plant is in this bed. I already dug my furrow. So we're gonna put bok choy into this one here. So this is gonna get all bok choy all up along here. Bok choy is a little tricky for us. So if we can keep this cooler weather longer and we can harvest it on time, meaning that it gets to a decent size, we should be okay. I actually have not had a lot of luck with bok choy yet, but we're going to give it a shot. It's one of those things in our area where our state in North Carolina puts out a planter's guide for different regions of North Carolina. And in my region, you get about a month to transplant it. You can only transplant it, and you get about a month before they say that it will or won't work. So we're going to kind of use that as guidance, and I do know that as sensitive as it is going to be, in fact, a very short period. So we're going to go ahead and get that in the ground today. But we're also going to keep planting our lettuce. So we're just going to keep planting our lettuce. I'm going to do that probably, I might do another round today. So we're going to succession sow our lettuce. And just to give you a little update about the ones we planted a couple videos ago, they're coming along well. Nice and perky and filled up with water now. So everything's going good here. So now that these are nice and happy, we are going to continue down this row, and we may actually just go ahead and fill out the rest of this row. Lettuce is another one that, I mean, it's so sensitive sometimes that you want to stay on top of it, and I would just hate to be like, oh, I'm waiting to succession plant, next thing you know, I've just got nothing but bolted lettuce everywhere. So we're going to try and stay on top of that. We also are going to be doing Napa cabbage, and I'll actually take you up here and show you the seedlings. I need to move them today because they're hardening off, and so I need to kind of get the next step. But Napa cabbage can be very sensitive, and it falls in line with bok choy, where there's a very small window in our area when we can plant it to ensure that we get a harvest. So we're going to get on top of that, and they're just about done hardening off, maybe a couple more days out here, and then we'll get them. So here's our Napa cabbage, and it's coming along very well. We've hardened them off for a couple days now. We're going real slow because it was warm, and they've really gotten a lot bigger. So we'll do probably another couple days of it, getting them more and more sun as they move down the line, and they should grow. This is the bok choy that we're going to be planting today, and it's been outside for about a week. It needs to be watered right now, so we're going to go ahead and get it in the ground and then water it. And I mean, they're already they're really strong, So we shouldn't have a lot of issues with that. If you guys are planting something in your garden in March, let us know what it is, because we all grow differently in different zones and different sections of the country and world for that matter. So let us know what you're growing in your gardens in the comments below. All right, so I just finished pulling out the bok choy to plant, and I just want to show you, you see how it's wrapping around right here? That means it's been in here just a little bit too long. But we have other ones, like for instance this one. I kind of pulled it out a little bit, but you can see how it's not wrapping at all. So this is actually good, because these roots are just going to keep growing down and looking, and otherwise they would just keep wrapping like they were. So I just kind of wanted to show you that. We're going to go plant these in the ground. I'm going to get my fertilizer down and plant them, and then I'm going to go over what seeds I'm going to start in March as well. That's done. So I have not successfully grown these to full harvest. One time I got one, so my spacing may not be right, but I know by the books you can put like 4 in a square foot. And so you can see, which I need to do some thinning. This is where my foobar came. This needs to be thinned out, but based on how this is gonna grow, I just did one straight line, and truth be told, we don't eat a crazy amount of bok choy. It's a nice treat. So we just went ahead and just put them in a single line. Now, when you have them, like let's say this is too close, what I'll do is I'll come out and I'll harvest every other one to create space for the other ones to get bigger as needed. So that's kind of how you can build in something if you kind of mess up a little bit. So I'm planting these today. It's a little bit warm for them, but the thought process is tomorrow it's supposed to rain, like a light rain most of the day. And my timer is supposed to come on to water as well. So they'll get nice and comfortable. The soil will get wet on the surface, and then we'll saturate it from the bottom a little bit. And then that should give it time to get nice and comfortable in the ground before next week comes. Because I think it's going to be like maybe 4 more days roughly before we get some more rain. And what I'm doing is I'm actually watering through, like irrigating myself every 3 days. So if I see that there's rain coming, then I'll go ahead and I'll cut off the water, or I'll delay it by a couple days just so I can get the rainwater to do it, because that seems to be the best method for this, because these vegetables take a lot of water. I mean, if you think about it, you're harvesting leaves, so you need a lot of nitrogen, a lot of water. The water makes them plump, and the nitrogen makes the leaves grow. So that's why we put the blood meal in, and then I used, again, a 10-10-10 fertilizer. Still waiting on the stuff that I want to use to come in. And so when that comes, what I'll do is I'll come back in and I'll scratch it into the surface. So, you know, that's just kind of how we're moving forward into our garden. And so this bed behind me right here, what we'll do on this front row right here, wherever it's empty, because remember, I said I wanted to start planting in like full rows going lengthwise, but I'm not going to ruin anything. Then we're going to go ahead and just plug in lettuce where we can along that row as well, because that's a quick harvest crop. You don't have to wait to get fully mature. You don't have to, you don't have to do anything crazy. You can harvest baby lettuce if you want. I mean, people pay big money for that stuff. So we'll go ahead and get in what we can there. Probably in a couple days, we'll come out and do that as well. We'll let this get nice and wet. And by doing all of these beds together, how that's going to benefit me is when I come back and then I'm going to inject fish fertilizer into my watering system, then I can fertilize everything at once. So I can't fertilize these with something like that right now, because they're going to, like right now as we speak, they're getting transplant shock. If you think about it, this little guy was in a semi-protected area, but he was getting a fair amount of shade throughout the day. And so right now, like today, he's going to be getting hammered. And you can see, it's just not totally strong. So it's going through transplant shock. It got pulled out of its pot. So we wanted to get comfortable, and you don't want to feed it right now. So we're going to wait a little while. Once we see some growth happening and see how these are kind of laying down a little bit. I mean, I try to plant them standing up, but if they don't stand up all the way, I want to see them kind of take the strength to grow up. And that's going to be the trigger to me to say, hey, you know what? It's time to go ahead and start planting or start fertilizing these a little bit. I inject a fertilizer into it, which I'm still trying to learn how to do. Yesterday, funny story, I actually had a bottle of it. I tried to release the pressure and I got fish fertilizer all in my face and my beard and my mouth. It was awful. So, you know, needless to say, there's quite a few showers occurring. But once we get that going and we can inject that into the ground, that's going to inject fertilizer to every plant in here. So we want to go ahead and do that. But then the granular fertilizer, as it breaks down, will be a localized feeding for all of them. So that kind of, it helps for that too. So you're not doing across the board constantly. And the fish fertilizer is a nice diluted, weak fertilizer, but it goes straight to the roots and gives it that push. And within a couple of days, you'll notice that it'll be greener, plumper, and you'll usually get some growth. And so like in the greenhouse where we were getting some aphid damage, we pushed that fertilizer to it to outgrow the damage so that the plant could recover quicker. The bed that the potatoes are going to go into, hopefully within the next week or two, hopefully within the next week. So what we're going to do today is just go ahead and sprinkle in some of the leftover fertilizer and just get that primed, especially because it's going to rain. It can start breaking down into this garden. And then just go ahead and have food available for those potatoes when they start to grow, because it's going to take a couple of weeks for it to start to break down and really activate the soil. So this will help with that. All right, so the seeds that we're going to be starting in March are pretty straightforward. It's going to be a lot of flowers. So we're going to be doing zinnias. We're going to be doing different types of marigolds. We're also going to be doing some more herbs and stuff like that, like our basil, our oregano. We're going to be doing, we may start another tray of tomatoes. I'm not totally sure yet how I want to do that, but if I do, it would be for a later season crop. So here in North Carolina, we can do 2 plantings. And so my goal is to get another planting in early July, which I know is like way far out. So we may actually do that at like the end of March, and then we can start putting them outside and just have them kind of growing in pots slowly, not really over fertilizing them or anything. Kind of depends on, you know, the weather and the space and all that stuff. We have to revisit our garden plan. We'll be starting, I like to start sunflowers inside just so I can get a head start. I don't have to keep up with the watering as much once I plant them. So we'll be doing a lot of that. A couple different perennials. I'm trying to fill out some spots in my yard with Shasta daisies. So we'll do that. Peppers, you know, it's a little late for peppers. We started our peppers in January and they're actually getting to an okay size now. So we'll be repotting them this month, like up potting them. So we'll be doing that. We did our sweet potatoes, so we'll do that. And what we'll probably end up doing with those this month is as they start to grow, we'll be plucking some of those slips off and then repotting them so we can kind of have maybe like a 6-pack of them or something. I like to do a little comparison of what a rooted in soil slip will do versus a like a non-rooted in soil slip would do. So let me rephrase that. A slip that's rooted but not in soil, what that would do. So we'll try and do that. But for the most part, that's about it. This is going to be a little bit of a slow month. Towards the end of the month, we could very well be doing our squashes and zucchinis, but that may fall into like early April. So we have a lot of space requirements here and constraints for our seed starting, and I put that onto myself for a reason, so I didn't go crazy. But we'll do that, and if we have room, we'll definitely start a round of those, but if we don't have room, then we're not. We're also going to start a couple peanuts this month too, so we'll do a little bit of those. It's just easier to start them inside, and that way they're kind of on my mind and I can see them. But we're not really going to do a big peanut grow this year. It just didn't really work out for us, and I don't have this space to really grow as much as I would like, so it's almost not worth it. And then finally, we're going to be starting our okra. So we'll probably be starting our okra this week, and we'll do that inside as well. And we'll start a fair amount of that. And we're going to do a Cajun jewel okra, which is a smaller. Typically, we've grown green velvet okra, and that one gets like 10 feet tall. The Cajun Jewel stays around 4 feet tall, which is a lot more manageable, especially at the rate in which you have to harvest the okra. So I would rather make it easier on myself. We're not going to be doing any direct sowing this month, so we're basically done with that for right now. And then in April is when it kicks over again, and I'll do another video in April about this, but all of that stuff will kind of go into high gear, and we'll be doing a lot of direct seeding, a lot of sowing and stuff like that, and then we'll kind of taper off as we go. So we're super excited to get the herbs going though. Just came out here and I haven't checked on my Brussels sprouts in a while. It's been kind of warm, so I wanted to see the status of them. Still learning how to grow them, but when we lift up the skirt here, we got a couple of Brussels sprouts going here. So I think what's gonna happen is, yeah, we got quite a few Brussels sprouts here. They're small, but they're edible. So I think what we're gonna do, actually, now that I think about it, is we're gonna go ahead and harvest these after, we're gonna get this cool spell. We'll let them grow out, and then we'll harvest them probably right before the next warm spell comes. And in the meantime, that's when we'll come in and we'll put those lettuces all around, and probably some Napa cabbages as well. So we can go ahead and get those going and get them in the ground and get everything good. But I think at this point, with the weather going this way, like I would rather harvest smaller Brussels sprouts than like open Brussels sprouts that aren't tight. So, you know, trying to get more out of them, because I mean, I got all kinds of leaves to eat. So that's the plan for right now. We'll see if that changes, but I'm pretty sure it's not, because the one lesson that I've learned is you don't wait and wait and wait and try and time it perfectly. Sometimes you just got to go ahead and harvest it and get it done and get something else in its place, so we can have a more productive, bountiful garden in the appropriate season. So one thing I want to say about March for my area, I'm in zone 8A in North Carolina, is March can be a very difficult time to start plants, because you think it's going to be cool, you think it's going to be warm, it may or may not freeze, you don't really know, so you can't go super crazy, but at the same time you want to make the right decisions. So if you're dealing with anything like that and you got like radical temperature swings and stuff, if I could make a suggestion to you, if you don't mind, I would say, you know, just be patient and stay the course. You know, don't get too wrapped up in what today's temperature is, because it could be anything. And I would just hate for somebody to lose some kind of decent harvest over something like being impatient. Because I mean, look, I want to get my tomatoes in the ground as well. I want to get my peppers in the ground, but right now I figure it's a good time to learn about some new crops. So for me, it's the bok choy, you know, and the potatoes. Yeah, they're a little late getting here, but at the same time, I know in the long run, it's going to be okay, because the cool weather is not over yet. And this is a perfect time for us to be planting some of these crops, especially these quick growing crops. So just be aware of that. And March can be very difficult, and it can be, it's an emotional roller coaster when it comes to a garden for me. And I imagine for some other people it is. I mean, most of us have been cooped up for the winter and are ready to get out. So just be aware of that. Goodbye.